$890 million. That is not a budget. That is not a company valuation. That is the estimated value of a Sinaloa cartel network hub that was operating in plain sight across Houston, Texas, and the Texas-Mexico border corridor for nearly 5 years. And it was not brought down by a wiretap. It was not brought down by an informant. It was brought down by one social media post, one photograph, one geotagged location that someone forgot to turn off before they hit upload. Federal authorities have now confirmed the seizure of over 4.7 tons of narcotics, $227 million in liquid cash and cryptocurrency, 14 properties, 38 vehicles, and enough fentanyl pills to kill every man, woman, and child in the state of Texas twice over. More than 1,400 federal agents from the FBI, DEA, ICE, DHS, and U.S. Marshals participated in the coordinated takedown across 19 locations spanning 4 Texas counties. 41 people have been arrested, 9 law enforcement officers are under federal investigation, and the man at the center of it all, a fictional logistics kingpin known internally as the Router, has been identified as Dominic Kesar, a man who never touched a brick of cocaine in his life, but moved more product through the American heartland than most cartels move in a decade. This is the full story, and if you think you have heard it all, wait until you see how deep this goes, because it gets worse. Much worse. It started at 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in late spring. The streets of Houston's East Industrial Corridor were dead silent. Not the peaceful kind of silent. The kind of silent that means something is about to happen. The fog clung to the pavement. Sodium streetlights flickered against rusted chain-link fences. Somewhere in the distance, a freight train horn echoed across the rail yards, and then nothing. Just the hum of idling engines and the crackle of encrypted radio channels. FBI tactical units moved first. 2 12-man teams approached a freight logistics warehouse on Lawndale Avenue that had been registered to a company called Pinnacle Route Freight LLC. On paper, Pinnacle handled cold chain transport for restaurant supply chains across the Gulf states. In reality, it had not delivered a single case of frozen shrimp in 3 years. DEA strike teams hit a second location simultaneously. Ecotcher, a modified auto body shop on Navigation Boulevard that had been flagged 6 months earlier for unusual chemical odors, but had somehow passed every city inspection without issue. ICE enforcement units moved on a third target, a residential compound in Pasadena that neighbors described as quiet but busy. Black SUVs at odd hours, deliveries that came in unmarked vans, men who never spoke to anyone on the block. The breaches happened within 45 seconds of each other. Flashbangs went first, then the doors came off their hinges. FBI agents in full tactical gear poured into the Pinnacle warehouse and found it stacked floor to ceiling with shrink-wrapped pallets labeled as restaurant equipment. Except the pallets did not contain restaurant equipment. Beneath the first layer of commercial packaging, CHASA agents found 212 kilos of cocaine pressed into bricks stamped with the Scorpion logo, a known marker tied to a Sinaloa cartel distribution arm operating out of Nuevo Laredo. Behind a false wall built into the loading dock, they found vacuum-sealed bricks of cash totaling an estimated $14.6 million, 3 handguns, 1 suppressed AR-style rifle, and a laptop that was still warm. At the auto body shop, DEA agents discovered a concealed basement beneath the hydraulic lift bay. Inside that basement were 800,000 fentanyl pills sorted by color and packaged in heat-sealed pouches designed to look like candy shipments. Next to the pills sat 96 kilos of methamphetamine in crystallized form, packed into modified car battery casings. The smell alone required respirators. At the Pasadena compound, ICE agents found something different. Not drugs. Not cash. They found people. 11 undocumented migrants locked in a converted garage with no windows, 1 toilet, and a padlocked steel door. Among them were 3 minors. Medical teams were called immediately, but the compound held one more secret. In a back office behind a reinforced steel bookshelf, agents found a rack-mounted server array, 3 encrypted hard drives, and a wall-mounted whiteboard covered in shipping codes, route abbreviations, and 1 phrase circled in red marker. The Router confirms. Nobody knew what that meant. Not yet. But by sunrise, they would. The laptop recovered from the Pinnacle warehouse was transported under armed escort to the FBI's Houston field office Cyber Forensics Division. By 7:40 a.m., a team of 6 digital analysts had bypassed the first layer of encryption. What they found was not a spreadsheet. It was not a contact list. It was an entire operational architecture. The system was built on layered virtual private networks routed through servers in Panama, Romania, and the Philippines. At its center was a command dashboard with a code name that analysts had never seen before, Project Mirage. Project Mirage was not a drug operation in the traditional sense. It was a logistics empire. It mapped every stage of the narcotics supply chain from the Mexican border to final delivery points across Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. Cocaine shipments from Sinaloa cartel producers in Culiacan were tracked in real time using encrypted GPS modules hidden inside modified diesel tanks on commercial trucks. Fentanyl pills manufactured in clandestine labs in Guerrero were routed through Laredo and McAllen using falsified agricultural inspection certificates. Methamphetamine loads were moved through legitimate cold storage supply chains, packed alongside frozen meat shipments that passed USDA checkpoints without a second glance. Heroin, smaller in volume but higher in street value per gram, was distributed through a network of massage parlors, vape shops, and unlicensed clinics operating across the greater Houston metro area. And all of it, every route, every shipment, every payment, every bribe, was authorized through a single digital signature. That signature belonged to Dominic Casar. Publicly, Dominic Casar was a 43-year-old logistics consultant who ran a mid-sized supply chain optimization firm called Meridian Corridor Solutions, based in a sleek glass office tower in the Galleria district of Houston. He drove a black Mercedes. He donated to local charities. He sat on the advisory board of 2 business development nonprofits. He had never been arrested, never been charged, never even received a parking ticket. But inside the encrypted world of Project Mirage, Dominic Casar was something else entirely. He was the router, and his digital fingerprint authorized everything. Every cocaine shipment, every fentanyl delivery, every migrant transfer, every bribe payment to every compromised officer, inspector, and official along the Texas-Mexico border corridor. Analysts estimated that over the previous 4 years, Project Mirage had moved approximately $890 million worth of narcotics, laundered cash, and human trafficking revenue through a web of 67 shell companies, 23 ghost corporations registered in Delaware and Nevada, 9 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and 4 sham charitable foundations that filed real tax returns with fabricated donation records. This was not corruption. This was command-level engineering. This was a man who had turned the 4th largest city in America into a cartel logistics hub without ever raising his voice, and it all came apart because of one Instagram post. 7 months before the raids, a low-level Sinaloa associate named Raul, who managed one of the Pasadena stash houses, made a mistake. He was at a birthday party for his girlfriend at a rented Airbnb near Kima Boardwalk. He posted a photo on Instagram. In the photo, he was holding a bottle of Don Julio 1942, with the bay visible behind him. He was smiling, he looked relaxed, and he forgot to turn off his location services. The geotagged coordinates embedded in that image placed him 1.2 miles from a marina that the DEA had been watching for unrelated reasons. A junior intelligence analyst at the DEA's Houston Organized Crime Division ran a routine metadata sweep on flagged social media accounts. The geotag pinged. A cross-reference with known associates of the Sinaloa cartel confirmed the connection, and from that one data point, a thread began to unravel that would take 7 months, 4 federal agencies, and over 1,000 personnel to fully pull apart. One post, one geotag, one mistake, and $890 million came crashing down. But the raids on Lawndale, Navigation, and Pasadena were only the beginning. By 6 a.m. the following Thursday, the operation entered its second phase. Inside a secured joint operations center at Ellington Field in southeast Houston, over 200 federal coordinators gathered around a massive digital display map that stretched across the entire front wall. On it, 47 red markers pulsed across the state of Texas. Each one represented a confirmed node in the Project Mirage network. FBI Deputy Operations Commander overseeing the task force addressed the room with a single sentence. Every red dot goes dark by sundown. The operation was designated Mirage Breaker. The numbers were staggering. Over 1,400 federal agents deployed across 4 counties, 52 SWAT tactical elements, FBI financial crimes and counterintelligence squads, DEA narcotics interdiction units, ICE Homeland Security Investigations teams, DHS Border Security Support, U.S. Marshals Fugitive Recovery Units, Black Hawk helicopters from Customs and Border Protection staging out of McAllen and Laredo, armored tactical vehicles positioned along the I-35 and I-10 corridors, and, in a move that underscored just how seriously Washington was taking the operation, 2 U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft were redirected from Gulf of Mexico training exercises to provide aerial surveillance over coastal smuggling routes connected to the network. The strikes began at 6:22 a.m. and unfolded in rapid succession. In Baytown, agents raided a chemical storage facility that had been importing precursor chemicals for methamphetamine production under the cover of industrial cleaning supply contracts. Inside, They found 340 kilos of meth in various stages of processing and a ventilation system designed to eliminate chemical odors. In Katy, a gated estate belonging to a shell corporation called Lone Gulf Holdings was breached by FBI SWAT. Inside the 11,000-square-foot mansion, agents found $31 million in vacuum-sealed cash hidden inside a custom-built vault behind the wine cellar, along with 19 firearms, 3 of which were fully automatic, and a collection of luxury watches valued at over $2 million. In Laredo, DEA and ICE units entered a trucking depot that served as the primary border crossing coordination point for the network. The depot processed an average of 40 commercial freight trucks per week. Federal agents discovered that roughly 1 in every 5 trucks carried concealed narcotics in modified fuel tanks, spare tire compartments, or hollowed-out structural panels. Total estimated narcotics seized at the Laredo depot alone, 1.8 tons of cocaine and 2.1 million fentanyl pills. In McAllen, agents discovered a tunnel, not a crude border tunnel. A reinforced concrete passage stretching 480 feet from a warehouse on the American side to a farmhouse south of the Rio Grande. The tunnel had lighting, ventilation, a rail system for moving cargo, and a communication hub with encrypted radios. It had been operational for an estimated 3 years. In the Houston Heights, a members-only nightclub called Velvet Meridian was raided just before dawn. The club, which publicly operated as an upscale lounge, had a sealed basement level accessible only through a biometric door behind the DJ booth. Inside, agents found a narcotics distribution center, a cash counting operation with 4 currency machines running simultaneously, and a communications room with monitors displaying real-time GPS feeds from 14 active cargo trucks spread across Texas and Louisiana. In Galveston, ICE agents boarded a 62-foot fishing vessel docked at a private marina. Beneath the deck, hidden inside modified bait tanks, they found 87 kilos of heroin and 44 kilos of cocaine. The vessel's registration traced back to a non-profit marine conservation fund. That fund was controlled by Dominic Cassar. By 4 p.m., Operation Mirage Breaker had executed warrants on all 47 targets. The seizure totals were still climbing, but early estimates painted a devastating picture. Over 4.7 tons of combined narcotics, more than $227 million in cash, cryptocurrency, and liquid assets, 14 residential and commercial properties. There were 38 vehicles including armored SUVs, luxury sedans, and modified freight trucks. 1 active smuggling tunnel, 1 maritime smuggling operation, 1 fully operational cartel nightclub, and 41 arrests including cartel coordinators, accountants, truck drivers, dock supervisors, tunnel operators, and 3 attorneys who had been providing legal cover for shell company registrations. The Sinaloa cartel's Texas network took more damage in 12 hours than it had absorbed in the previous 12 years. But the deepest wound was still being uncovered. As federal analysts worked through the encrypted servers and hard drives recovered across all 47 sites, a pattern emerged that no one had expected. Project Mirage did not just corrupt the supply chain, it corrupted the people tasked with stopping it. But internal logs showed that 9 active law enforcement officers were receiving regular payments through cryptocurrency wallets linked to the network. 2 were Border Patrol agents stationed at the Laredo port of entry. Their job was simple. Flag specific truck identification numbers as pre-cleared, allowing narcotics-loaded vehicles to pass through inspection without secondary screening. 1 was a senior sergeant with the Harris County Sheriff's Office who had been providing advance notice of upcoming raid operations to a cartel handler for over 2 years. Every time a federal task force scheduled an operation near a Mirage asset, the sergeant sent a coded text message within hours. The asset would be moved, the location would go clean, and the raid would find nothing. 2 more were officers embedded within the Houston Police Department's narcotics division. Their role was not to tip off raids. Their role was to steer investigations away from Mirage-connected targets by feeding false intelligence into departmental databases. They would flag innocent addresses as active targets while marking real cartel stash houses as resolved cases. 1 was a municipal court clerk in Galveston County who dismissed traffic violations and minor infractions for cartel-affiliated drivers to prevent any paper trail that might attract federal attention. And 3 were legislative aides connected to state-level politicians who had used their positions to delay or water down proposed legislation targeting money laundering through shell corporations in Texas. Every one of them had been paid. Every one of them had a trail. And every one of them was now facing federal charges. An FBI supervisory agent involved in the internal investigation was quoted in sealed court filings as saying, "What we uncovered was not a few bad apples. It was a second chain of command. A parallel enforcement structure built inside the legitimate one. The cartel did not just bribe officers. They recruited them. They trained them. They gave them roles. They turned our own system into their security detail. Honest officers who had spent years working narcotics cases in Houston described the revelation as gut-wrenching. One veteran DEA agent, speaking on condition of anonymity, said, "You work 16-hour days. You miss your kids' birthdays. You put your life on the line. And then you find out the guy sitting 2 desks away was sending your operation plans to the people you were trying to catch. That does something to you that does not heal easily." But the damage was not limited to Texas. As analysts mapped the full scope of Project Mirage, they discovered that the network extended far beyond the Texas-Mexico border corridor. Dominic Cassar had built a continental distribution architecture. Cocaine moved north from Houston along the I-45 corridor into Dallas, then split into 2 branches, one heading northeast through Oklahoma City and into Arkansas, the other pushing northwest through Amarillo into Colorado and Kansas. Fentanyl pills followed a separate path, routed through legitimate pharmaceutical cold chain logistics companies that Cassar had partially acquired through Shell Corporation investments. These pills moved through Memphis, Nashville, and Atlanta disguised inside pallets of over-the-counter vitamin supplements. Methamphetamine traveled west through San Antonio and El Paso, linking up with existing Sinaloa distribution cells in Tucson and Phoenix. Heroin, the smallest but most profitable arm, moved through Galveston's port connections into New Orleans and from there into the Deep South. In total, analysts estimated that at peak capacity, the Project Mirage network could move between 8 and 12 tons of narcotics per month across 7 states without triggering a single federal alert. Shipping manifests were altered using compromised freight management software. Way stations along key interstate corridors were mysteriously taken offline for scheduled maintenance every time a Mirage convoy passed through. Agricultural inspection certificates were pre-approved by bribed officials, allowing trucks carrying concealed narcotics to bypass checkpoints entirely. And human trafficking operations, which moved undocumented migrants through the same corridors, served a dual purpose. They generated additional revenue, and they provided cover. If a truck was ever stopped and migrants were discovered, the narcotics compartment remained hidden while attention was diverted to the immigration violation. It was a system designed not just to move drugs, but to be invisible while doing it. But the most chilling discovery came from a single encrypted file recovered from Dominic Cassar's personal server at the Galleria office tower. The file was labeled MER-Legacy-2030. Inside, analysts found a strategic expansion plan that outlined how the Sinaloa cartel intended to use Houston as its permanent Atlantic-side command platform for all operations east of the Rocky Mountains. The plan included timelines for acquiring additional shell corporations, targets for recruiting law enforcement and political officials in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Georgia, and a financial model projecting $3.2 billion in annual revenue by the year 2030. Cassar had not just built a drug network, he had built the blueprint for a shadow government, a parallel system of power operating beneath the surface of democracy, funded by cocaine, fentanyl, and human misery. One analyst who reviewed the MER-Legacy-2030 file described it in a single sentence that has since been repeated in every sealed briefing connected to this case. This was not a cartel trying to survive inside the system. This was a cartel trying to become the system. Dominic Cassar was arrested without incident at 6:47 a.m. during the second wave of Operation Mirage Breaker. He was at his home in the Memorial Villages area of Houston, a $4.8 million estate with a pool, a 3-car garage, and a security system that he never activated that morning. He was wearing a bathrobe. He was drinking coffee. He did not run. He did not resist. He looked at the agents, set down his cup, and said 4 words. "It took you long enough." And maybe he was right. Maybe it did take too long, because while federal agencies spent months building their case, fentanyl kept flowing, and people kept dying. In Harris County alone, fentanyl-related overdose deaths increased by 34% over the 4 years that Project Mirage was operational. Across the 7 states connected to the network, the number is estimated to be in the thousands. Thousands of parents who buried their children. Thousands of children who grew up without a parent. Thousands of communities where the poison arrived in candy-colored pills and left behind nothing but silence and gravestones. This is what $890 million looks like when you peel back the numbers. It is not abstract. It is not a statistic. It is a body count. And it all could have continued for years, maybe decades, if one man at a birthday party had not posted a photo. If one geotag had not pinged. If one analyst had not been paying attention on a slow Tuesday afternoon, one post, one coordinate, one thread pulled, and an empire collapsed. Power does not always announce itself with gunfire. Sometimes it hides behind spreadsheets, logistics dashboards, and charity galas. Sometimes the most dangerous man in the room is not the one holding a weapon. He is the one holding a login. And the lesson of Project Mirage is not just about drugs or money or corruption. It is about how easily systems can be turned, how quietly democracy can be hollowed out from the inside, and how the only thing standing between order and collapse is the willingness of honest people to keep looking, keep digging, and keep refusing to look the other way.